If you're going to make that dedication to show up to that networking group every week or every month, you're proven that you do what you say. I find value in people, right? So I could have intelligent conversation. You're never going to be never going to wake up one day and say, okay, I'm 100% ready to dive in, right? You're always going to have those insecurities.
And we're back on the MHP Exchange Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Rizzo. Joining me is my partner, Eric Busuttil, and we're coming to you from the capital of mobile home parks in New York City, Staten Island, which is home to the only mobile home park in New York City. One thing for those of you listening right now, if you are there and you like the content, make sure you go to iTunes, make sure you go to Spotify and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us on the search and you'll be able to find us a lot faster. So make sure you follow us on iTunes or you're listening on Spotify, like it, subscribe, give us a rating. We want to hear back. We are back today. And today, Eric, this is very special. It's the first time we've done this in the entire history of us doing this podcast. You know,
What is that, Frank?
this is the first time we have a recurring guest joining us today.
Right. You're right, Frank.
So this is our first recurring guest we have with us in studio because last time he was on Zoom, right? But we have in studio Dominick Ciccarelli. Now, Dominick is a very prominent architect and really real estate investor. But on top of that, he's a Fox News contributor. We were able to schedule this out in between his Fox News appearances. But he's joining us today to touch on a topic that is more, I would say, not just specific to the MHP space, but something that I think if you're getting into this space is super important for you. But if you're a real estate investor or a business owner, you definitely want to kind of plug into this because I'd say, and Eric and I happen to know a lot of the same people. We've done business with a lot of the same people through the years. There's probably nobody who I know who does this better. And you know what that is?
Then Dominick?
Then Dominick.
No, it's networking.
Networking.
Right. So Dominick, the reason why you're back is the second time is because you're a very special person. And we thought that this was a great topic that anybody in real estate or in any business space, I mean, you need to become very good at this. And with social media, the way it is right now, I mean, networking is a great topic. And Frank said it right. Nobody does it better than you. Dom, why don't you, I know you do a bunch of different things. Networking is probably what you do best. And that's where I think you're spending most of your time right now, right? Could you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, so first off, thank you guys for having me back. I think you guys are doing a great job with this podcast. And, you're the go-to guy for sure, in this space of the trailer park communities. Listen, we could talk about networking in general. It's not for everyone. You definitely need a unique personality to network. Not anyone could just show up to a room and not know anybody and make friends. I have been told I have that personality, and over the last few years, I've been, maybe exploiting it and using my personality to get more into networking. So why is networking important in business in general, right? People, especially when you open up a new business, people don't want to do business with someone that they don't trust or don't know. And I find that the benefit to networking is you put a face to the name, right? Once you join some type of a networking group, right? It could be your local chamber of commerce. It could be like a BNI group, which is a nationally recognized company, throughout the country. Once you start meeting people on a regular basis, whether it's weekly or monthly, there's this sense of security where they get to know you, they get to know your character and, a little bit about your personal life. And people want to do business with people they know and they trust. The other aspect of it is accountability, right? If you're going to make that dedication to show up to that networking group every week or every month, you're proven that you do what you say, right? And you're going to show up for someone. And let's just say we're in a group together and Eric is asked to do someone's mortgage and he knows he's going to run into that person next week or next month. Not that he wouldn't do it normally, but he'll make sure he's working on that project or he's giving it the time it needs to get it done. So in general, that's why I think networking is good. You're a small business owner in any business, put yourself out there. I know it's not easy. You need a really unique personality. And listen, it will make you a better public speaker. It'll make you feel more comfortable in front of a camera. These are things we need to do in our society with social media and people starting podcasts and maybe doing videos to promote their business. That's how I would, in general, networking, why I think it's important.
So one thing I'll say about myself is that up until the last couple of years, I have not really taken advantage of social media. However, I have been analyzing what people do on social media, and people have really come away from networking, right, by using social media to network. And you definitely could get to know somebody by, looking at their social media, seeing what they're doing on Facebook. But, this kind of brings us back to doing things, I guess we could call it old school, right? There's no better way to do business than to meet somebody in person. And there's one thing, that I know as long as I can remember, it's not always how, it's who, right? So meeting people in person and, getting to know them and finding the right people to do business with is very important. I think social media is, like I said, has taken that over, and it's a good entry point. But going back to networking, and you've, I think you've really spun it back that way better than anybody.
Yeah, one thing I will say about social media is we all need it in our businesses, but it's the highlight reel. You're not really, you're seeing the edited, polished version of what that person wants to see. When you're doing these Zoom networking calls or in-person networking calls, you are seeing imperfections, right? You're showing, that person might be showing up late and their hair's a mess or a little frazzled, or maybe they had a fight with their wife, or their kids were up at 1 a.m. and you're up for 5 hours. That's the nuts and bolts and the meat and potatoes of getting to know someone, right? Viewing someone's social media page, I don't think you really get to see the true person, right? It's the highlight reel. Frank and I met through a group called the Staten Island Economic Development Council many years ago, and over the years I've evolved. My networking style and how I spend my time has changed drastically to pre-COVID, right? And COVID did change how we network and maybe how people spend their time. To talk about myself, pre-COVID, when I first started, I didn't know anything about networking. I just knew I had a small business and I had to meet people. With an architectural firm, most of my clients are one and done clients, right? So I have to constantly find new people and new relationships who may need our services. So my approach back then was just join some local community organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, like the SIEDC. When COVID came, I might have been on the board or involved in maybe 10 or 12 organizations. And every night and morning, I'm just busy meeting people. And after time doing that, you realize, wait a minute, maybe this group isn't for me, or my time could be spent more wisely, or I've met everyone I could meet in that group. I need to grow someplace else. So what was great about COVID was we were forced to shut down, not meet, reevaluate how we spend our time and who we spend our time with. Yes, I am an extrovert and I do need human interaction. So when we were shut down and none of these groups were meeting, I actually reached out to a handful of people, you two being some of them, and say, hey guys, let's get together once a month still for dinner, even though, it's a post-COVID world. Why? Because I find value in people, right? So I could have intelligent conversation. You provide value and advice. We get along personally, right? So I handpicked, a dozen people that I enjoy spending time with, that we can be assets to each other. And we started meeting for dinner once a month.
Sure.
And then that evolved into a breakfast, which was a little bit more of an intimate group, which you guys
was
also involved in.
Was it the breakfast or the dinner first?
So we started them both at the same time, actually, wow, with the intent that the dinner would be more casual, not structured, just, hey, a bunch of guys getting together and just hang out. And then the breakfast was, out of the 20 guys that we're meeting for dinner, let's handpick 10 of them, the cream of the crop of that group, without insulting anyone, and that could have this personality, do this like mastermind group.
You said that, you're an extrovert, but one thing I don't think that you've hit on, and I think maybe you discount this about what you do, and I think what makes you a great networker, when you go into one of these groups, I think some people or a lot of people have the intention of, okay, what can I get out of it? So I go in and I'm looking to get business. Look, everybody there in a room or a group that's looking to network is looking to get business. What I think set you apart is when you go in that room, you've done a great job of connecting other people together. So while you talk about, hey, I put this group together for dinner, right, which he did create this networking group for a dinner, it's always prefaced with, Frank, I think you should talk with this person. He mentioned to me something that you're involved in. He mentioned that he's interested in learning more about the mobile home park space. I think you should talk with him. I'm having this meeting and putting them together, not looking for business for yourself. Now, ultimately, that leads people to want to do business with you, right? But you take that approach first of, like giver's gain, right? So I'm going to give first and then I'll get later. So can you expand on that a little bit? Because I don't think you have to be an extrovert to do that.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I read this book a while ago. It's a super small, easy read called The Go-Giver. The book basically says, the more you give, the more you'll get, right? And passively. And you're 100% right. You can't just walk into a room of strangers and say, hey, I'm here, give me business. It's never going to work. In fact, you're going to probably get less business from that because it's just a wrong approach. I am a people connector. I enjoy people. I want to see my friends succeed just as much as myself. It's the truth. But after reading that book, I'm like, wow, I enjoy putting together people that either could form great friendships or do some business together. So after reading that book, I'm like, you know what? That's why nobody gets paid to go to that dinner. No one gets paid to go to that breakfast. So I just do it. I do enjoy doing it, but I'm seeing the fruits of my labor. So for example, at one of our dinners a few months ago, a real estate agent and a car salesman happened to sit across from each other. Again, this is a very passive social group. They didn't know each other. They met each other that night. The next day, the real estate guy walked into that guy's car's dealership and bought 2 trucks. And I got a phone call later that day from the car guy who never came to a dinner before. And he's like, Dom, you wouldn't believe what happened. He's like, besides, thanks for dinner last night, I just sold 2 trucks. I'm like, see, that's the benefit of coming out and contributing and being part of the group.
And now those people, whenever they hear anybody needs anything architecturally, they're only going to think of you because nobody else has done for them what you just did for them.
Yeah, you're right. That wasn't the plan for the meeting, but it kind of evolved into that. And there's a lesson to be learned. Just put yourself out there, be a good human, try to help people out, and contribute in positive ways, right? Life is very short. There's a lot of toxic people in our lives. And post-COVID, that's the biggest change I made, right? I didn't just jump back into all those groups I was part of pre-COVID. I thought specifically in my mind, who are the type of people I want to spend my time with? Maybe I want to get into the trailer park space. Okay, and then you can hone down and narrow down. Okay, there's a group for that. Your podcast and your platform you're building is a perfect example of that, right? No one might buy a trailer park from you or become a tenant in your park, but they're going to come to you as an asset to learn about this business and then maybe do it in Nebraska, right?
Correct.
So I honed in on the exact type of client I want moving forward because life is moving by very quickly. I'm in business 20 years already. And now I refocus my energy to I'm going to join specific groups and network and communicate and socialize with very, very specific people that will bring me that type of a client, which in my case, I'm focusing very heavily in Manhattan now. I have a very strong business here on the island. Staten Island's a beautiful place. I love Staten Island, but I'm enjoying now working on these smaller projects in the city, condo renovations, restaurant renovations, office space, and you're dealing with a very diverse group of people, and it's helping me grow as a person as well. So that's where I'm focusing my attention now.
When you go into those groups, right? So let's use you as your personality is, like you said, extroverted. You're at that point, but not everybody is as gregarious as that. Can be a Fox News contributor and be very comfortable behind that. But what would you recommend to somebody who's coming in and the intent that they should go into maybe joining a group or creating their own network? Like, how do you go in there and, you have to offer value to that group and letting people know like, hey, I'm a resource. And I say this in knowing you, I guess right now about 14, 15 years, there was many times before we even did business. I was in real estate. Hey, I had a question. I'd call you. Hey, Dom, and we'd be able to pick each other's brains. Like, how do you, what would you recommend to somebody as first steps where you offer value and how you could be intentional about what you're going to do in those groups to create that, network for yourself?
Yeah. So one thing I learned, that I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, is if you're a young new business owner and maybe you have a small family or small network of friends, and you're considering joining, let's just say, a chamber of commerce or a BNI group. You're like, well, what do I have to offer, right? The truth is, you have a network that you're really not aware of. You have a brother, you have a mother, you might have a childhood friend, you might have a neighbor, right? Oh, that neighbor sells life insurance. Yeah, you might not be best friends, but if you really dig deep, everyone has some type of network. You know, it might be a handful of people, but that's a network. And put yourself in just a room, right? I always tell people, just get started. If you wait till you're ready to do something, even in your career, you're never going to be ready, and you're never going to wake up one day and say, okay, I'm 100% ready to dive in, right? You're always going to have those insecurities. So what I tell people, including my children, is just listen, choose a direction and just go, right? And you're going to find your way. Join maybe a local chamber of commerce or a BNI group. Get your feet wet. You might not stay there for long. You might find out it's not for you, but it will give you the taste of doing it. And you're going to learn very quickly what you like and dislike and what you're good at and what you're not good at. But don't be fearful that you have nothing to contribute, because everyone has something at some level.
One thing I've learned in networking, and I go to the dinners, and I'm always out there networking. And one thing for everybody, just not everybody is going to have the same synergies as everybody. So, I mean, the one thing I think everyone should pay attention to when they're at these networks is who has the same personalities, right? I mean, that's what you're looking for in business. If you're looking to network in business, you want to do business with people with like minds, similar personalities. And I think that's where you do a great job, Dom. You're able to kind of get along with all different types of people. But if you are going to, join a group, right, do you tend to stick with the group that you feel is syncing with your personality, or do you tend to go the opposite way and try to?
It's a good question. So when I'm putting together a group, I try to put together the right personalities. I have some dear friends of mine that I don't invite to some groups, and they actually get mad at me, and they're like, why don't you invite me to this? And it's not because they're a bad person or I don't like them. It's just because I think the people that happen to be sitting in that room that day might not gel well. A quick example, I invited someone as a guest, very, very close friend of mine, to a networking event pre-COVID. And within 20 minutes, this person has to be very passionate and very opinionated. And within 20 minutes of being my guest to this group, he's calling someone a communist. And I'm like, listen, I go, this doesn't go here. We're bringing positive energy here. And yes, someone is going to disagree with you, and you can't, this isn't a battlefield where you're going to prove you're right. You just have to sit here and respect that, right? For me, I do kind of get along with everyone, and I let things roll off my shoulders. But if I go to a group that I see, is not for me, and maybe the energy isn't right, it doesn't mean they're bad people. It's just not the energy for me, And I've joined groups just recently. I joined the group mostly in the Bronx. And listen, great group of people. But after 3 months, I'm like, you know what? This group isn't for me, and I don't see a future of me growing here. And, it's all very respectful and positive. And listen, guys, it was great meeting you. I hope we do business in the future, but let's move on. Yeah.
Do you do any?
So one question. After hanging out with Frank, I mean, do you feel like he's the right person to hang out with? I still don't know for myself anyway.
I'm keeping you guessing, right? And it's just keeping you along for you're coming along.
The main thing is his wife is just constantly like thanking me so much for taking him away from me. So I just try to make his wife happy. If I can do good, I'll get good, right?
That's exactly it. Thank you very much. So do you do a lot of online, like do you join these groups online, or is everything you're doing in person? I ask this question because, obviously we're in a space specifically, right? So if you're listening to this program and you're thinking about getting into the MHP space, a lot of time you're looking at buying assets that might not be local to you, right? So your network might have to be a little bit broader. We've developed relationships with people that we might see once a year, right? And a diverse group of people. So do you do any networking online, right? Yeah. And so what's the difference in that dynamic? Like if you're going to have, and I know this has become a little bit more popular recently with COVID, but if you're joining one of these online groups where you're going to be networking online, like what's the key in that dynamic and creating that relationship when you can't read body language, where you can't have that, maybe that one-on-one moment that you might have, right, in right next to somebody.
Right. So let's just do two comparisons, right? So you can have a business where you sell business cards, and then you have a business where you're in mobile home park, right? A business card, a person who sells business cards has a huge, huge network of people that they could market to. In the mobile home park space, it's super niche. It's probably one of the most niche real estate asset you can talk about. So I think it depends on what you're selling, right? If you're trying to get into a space to sell business cards, then listen, you can almost be in any room and learn something and do business, right? Where in a very niche market like yours, you almost have to do it virtual and through a Zoom, because you're talking about maybe more nationally reaching out to folks as opposed to your local hometown, feel. So with me, I'm actually doing a blend of both. So every Tuesday morning between 7 and 9, I'm on a Zoom group, which is actually New York based, but you get Long Island, Westchester, and the 5 boroughs. So it's a much bigger net that you're casting out at. Wednesday mornings at 7 a.m., I'm at the Cornell Club. It's an in-person meeting, 40 people, and it's just all Manhattan based, right? For me, I really want to keep New York and New Jersey as my home. So I'm not looking to do stuff in Nebraska or Las Vegas, where again, in the more niche environment, like mobile home parks, you might be based in Ohio, but might buy a park in Alabama. So I think speaking of you guys specifically, it's going to be hard for them to find local groups to be in person with. So I think Zoom is probably the only answer. And believe it or not, through Zoom, you could get that personal reaction, because I do have a requirement that if you're in a Zoom call, you should really have your video on. You're doing an injustice to yourself and to the people you're trying to interact with.
So that's funny that you say that, Dom. We live our lives basically on Teams, right? So I don't even, like my team, I'm not calling them on the phone anymore. I'm calling them on Teams all day, every day. And I've adopted that practice throughout every business that I have. I'm always calling people on Zoom, Teams, and I bring that up to people that there's a Zoom etiquette. And if you're going to be on a meeting with me, especially if you're one of my employees, I have to see your face.
Yeah.
I don't like speaking to, that's not why we're on this call. I just call you on the phone. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can get that effect from, and that's why, the Zoom etiquette is so important.
And don't forget, guys, in doing business on Zoom, right? Because I have people that are not based in New York City that work for me as well. That's how you're getting to know people. That's how you're building the culture in the firm. That's how you're getting to, you can't see someone if they're crying or smiling through a phone call, right? You need to see that, and you want that human interaction. So I think if you're going to work with your employees over Zoom, you got to do it on the video. And that's how you build a bond between these people.
But if you're going to do that networking, and your networking group is a virtual, say, meetup group, or you have to, I think, also try to make that one-on-one connection offline, even if that is a phone call or not always a Zoom. Like, you have to figure out that offline connection, not just at that meeting, because you almost have to work a little bit harder to create and maintain that relationship. From my career arc, and I started, on the phone, with my clients, doing that was the constant, repetitive, reaching out on the little things, or sometimes just calling just to share a funny story or a tidbit. And that's what really creates that relationship. So if you're networking from a distance with a team that you're looking to build, or a group that you're in, you have to have that offline, in between the next meeting connection.
And I'll tell you what goes a long way. When COVID happened and everybody was home, trying to salvage, their business, or, keeping family members in touch, I got on the phone and I called every client I had over the last few years. Hey, hope your family's okay. If there's anything you need, I'm here for you. I'm still working every day, but if you need me to jump in and help you with something. And people appreciate that. They're like, wow, this guy isn't just looking for my money, but he wants, we're part of each other's lives, and there's a dynamic there. So you have to give to get, for sure, and you do have to build those personal connections.
Sure. So what is your number one tip? Someone starting out, looking to, they find a group that they feel comfortable with. I think this is the group that they should be in. What's your top tip that you would give them in getting started?
Just jump in. You're never going to feel 100% comfortable. Be accountable. Be trustworthy, and build relationships with people. People want to do business with people that they trust. And just showing up every week and meeting them will form that over time.
Good topic.
Well, I think it's a necessary topic, because this business, any business, we're saying this business, but I think any business is networking. And we spoke to enough people who say, how do you get started? And the first thing you got to do, looking at your business, you're writing a plan, you're getting that done. But the first thing you should do, if you're really serious about the business or any business, is you got to build a network of people that you could say, these are trusted resources I could go to with a question to grab that knowledge I need to be successful. And the only way you do that is if you build a network of people, right?
Yeah.
And that's super key. And I appreciate you coming in. Any last comments? Well, where can people find you if they have questions or have questions about networking?
Yeah, on most of my social media, it's at DCiccarelli Jr. Think Design Architecture, if you Google it. Blueprint for Closers podcast. I'll leave everybody with just this one thought. I have a very good friend of mine who lives in my building in the city. He's a real estate attorney. He joined a BNI group 20 years ago. He's never left it, and he's a very successful attorney, and he bases his entire success from that one BNI group. Not his family, not his friends around him, not his college buddies, but showing up every day, contributing, being part of the group. 20 years later, he dedicates that one group to the success of his real estate attorney business.
Very interesting, Dom.
Yeah.
Great topic. Dom, thanks for joining us. You look
Thank
great
you.
today, by the way. So glad we had you in studio. This has been the MHP Exchange Podcast. If you have questions, check out the themhpexchangepodcast.com. That is the one source for opportunity, news, education, and entertainment in the MHP space. You could find listings. You'll find up-to-date news that's happening in the industry. You'll find articles that you could use in your investing or ownership life. And you'll see some videos from us to give you some tips and tidbits along the way. So that is the MHPExchange.com. And guys, if you've listened to this program and you like what you heard, go to iTunes or Spotify, give us a 5-star rating, give us your feedback. We want to hear that as well. Any questions that you have, drop us a line at themhpexchange.com, and we use that for feedback for our next program. Dom, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
And for those listening, I'm Frank Rizzo. That's Eric Busuttil. And until next time, themhpexchange.com. Thank you.